In the previous section, we learned how condominiums combine individual ownership with shared responsibilities, governed by declarations, bylaws, and associations. This next section builds on that foundation by examining how condominiums are organized and managed in practice, and then transitions into an entirely different ownership model: the cooperative. Both forms involve collective living, but they differ fundamentally in what you actually own and how you exercise your rights as an owner. Condominium organization and management. A condominium association is the heart of community operations. Established through the Condominium Declaration, it is typically managed by an elected board of directors, which serves as the governing authority for the property. The board is responsible for enforcing bylaws, managing budgets, and ensuring that the property remains safe, functional, and financially sound. The board organizes how the property is managed and by whom. It may appoint management agents, hire resident managers, and establish committees to oversee specific tasks such as landscaping, maintenance, or finance. For larger developments, the association often contracts with a professional property management company to handle day-to-day operations, collect assessments, and coordinate repairs. Condominiums, by their very nature, require extensive and ongoing management. This includes maintenance of shared spaces, accounting, record-keeping, sanitation, landscaping, and enforcing community rules. Security, parking control, and trash removal are other frequent responsibilities. The association may engage contractors or in-house personnel to fulfill these services efficiently. Owner responsibilities. While the association manages the shared aspects of the property, individual unit owners have their own responsibilities. These typically include maintaining and repairing the interior of their unit, keeping all internal systems in working order, and ensuring the contents of their unit against damage or loss. Owners also share financial responsibility for the condominium's overall upkeep through common area assessments. These assessments cover all property expenses, such as insurance, management fees, maintenance, and legal costs. The association prepares an annual operating budget, and each unit owner pays a proportionate share, usually billed monthly. For example, if an owner's unit represents 2% of the property's total value, their share of common expenses will also be 2%. This proportional system ensures fairness and transparency across all owners. Failure to pay assessments has serious consequences. The condominium board may record a lien on the delinquent unit and even initiate foreclosure proceedings to recover the amount owed. Unlike in a rental, where unpaid rent affects only a tenant's occupancy, unpaid assessments in a condominium can jeopardize property ownership itself. Cooperatives, co-ops. While condominiums involve ownership of real property, cooperatives or co-ops represent ownership of personal property. A cooperative is a corporate ownership structure in which a non-profit corporation or association owns the entire property, usually an apartment building. Individual residents become part owners by purchasing shares in the corporation, rather than purchasing real estate directly. Interests, rights, and obligations. When a person buys into a cooperative, they receive two things: stock certificates representing their ownership shares in the corporation, a proprietary lease granting the right to occupy a specific unit. The number of shares purchased reflects the value of the unit in relation to the total property. For example, if a 9-unit cooperative apartment building is worth $900,000 and each unit is equal in size and desirability, each apartment represents $100,000, or 1/9 of the total value. A buyer purchasing one unit would pay $100,000 for shares and receive a proprietary lease for that apartment. The cooperative corporation is the only entity that holds a real property interest. The individual shareholders' interests, represented by their shares and lease, are considered personal property. This means the shareholder owns neither the physical apartment nor an undivided share of the building. Instead, they own part of the corporation that owns the building. Because of this structure, Co-op ownership comes with certain restrictions. The corporation controls both the use and transfer of units. Buyers must often obtain board approval before purchasing shares, and owners may need approval before subletting or altering their apartments. Proprietary lease. The proprietary lease is unique to cooperatives. It grants occupancy rights to shareholder tenants for as long as they own their shares, with no fixed term. Rather than paying rent, owners pay their pro rata share of the cooperative's expenses, which may include mortgage payments, taxes, maintenance, and insurance. For example, if a shareholder owns 1/9 of the co-op, they are responsible for 11.11% of the building's operating expenses. Failure to pay assessments jeopardizes not only their own occupancy, but potentially the entire building's financial stability, since the corporation must cover all obligations as a single entity. This is a key distinction from condominium ownership. In a condo, one owner's delinquency affects only their own unit. In a co-op, non-payment can endanger every resident's investment because the property itself could be foreclosed upon. Expense liability. Since the cooperative corporation owns the entire property, any debt or legal obligation applies to the whole, not to individual units. If the corporation defaults on a mortgage or fails to pay property taxes, the lender could foreclose on the entire building, terminating all proprietary leases and effectively dissolving the co-op. This collective risk underscores the importance of strong financial management and responsible governance by the board of directors. Transfer of ownership. When a shareholder sells their co-op interest, they transfer both their stock certificates and proprietary lease to the new buyer. The buyer must typically be approved by the co-op board before the transfer is finalized. This approval process helps maintain community stability, but can also limit marketability compared to condominiums, which can be freely sold. Organization and management. Like a condominium, a developer initially creates the cooperative by forming the corporation and drafting governing documents, such as the Articles of Incorporation, bylaws, and house rules. Once formed, the shareholders elect a board of directors responsible for managing and operating the property. The board sets budgets, collects assessments, hires maintenance staff, and enforces policies. However, co-op boards exercise greater control than condo boards because the corporation legally owns the entire building. A shareholder's voting power depends on the number of shares owned, reflecting the proportional value of their apartment. Condos versus co-ops. Key differences. While both condominiums and cooperatives provide housing in multi-unit structures, their ownership forms are fundamentally different. A condominium owner holds a fee simple title to real property and a tenancy in common interest in common areas. A cooperative owner holds personal property, stock in a corporation, and a proprietary lease to occupy their unit. In a condo, each owner's financial responsibility is limited to their own unit. In a co-op, the entire property's finances are shared, and one shareholder's failure to pay can affect all others. Review summary. Condominiums and cooperatives both represent community-based ownership, but the type of property interest differs sharply. A condominium unit owner owns real property, complete with a recorded deed and independent financing. A cooperative shareholder owns personal property, consisting of corporate shares and a proprietary lease. Condominium associations manage shared spaces but cannot control individual ownership transfers, whereas cooperative boards control both property management and occupancy. Condos offer more autonomy and flexibility, while co-ops emphasize community control and financial unity. Discussion. What is the primary distinction between condominium and cooperative ownership? Answer. Condominium ownership involves owning real property, while cooperative ownership involves owning personal property, corporate shares. Why does a co-op board require financial approval of new buyers? Answer. Because the financial stability of one shareholder affects the entire cooperative. Unpaid assessments can jeopardize the whole property. How is a co-op owner's voting power determined? Answer: it is proportional to the number of shares owned in the cooperative corporation. What risk do co-op owners face that condominium owners do not? Answer: if the cooperative corporation defaults, the entire property can be foreclosed upon, terminating all shareholders' leases. Closing remarks. Understanding the difference between condominiums and cooperatives is essential for real estate professionals and consumers alike. Both provide homeownership within a community setting, but each requires a different mindset and level of financial interdependence. Condominiums offer greater independence and liquidity, while cooperatives demand collective responsibility and financial trust among neighbors. As always, professionals should advise clients to consult attorneys and lenders familiar with these ownership structures before purchasing or selling within either system.